My name is Meredith Ringel from Microsoft Research, and I'm presenting joint work with Shaun, Kane, and Anhong on the topic Sense and Accessibility. You can download our full Assets 2020 paper at aka.ms/sense-A11y. Sensing systems are already a part of our everyday interactions at home, at work, and in public, and they will grow in importance as the Internet of Things, smart cities, and AI-powered technologies continue to proliferate. Sensing systems rely on a variety of explicit and implicit interactions that often embed ability assumptions about end users' physique and mobility. In the US, the CDC estimates that approximately 16% of the population has difficulty with physical functions. In this work, we investigate the challenges that sensing systems pose for the substantial subset of the population comprised of people with physical disabilities. We conducted an online survey with 40 adults with physical disabilities. Much more detailed information about the self-described disability status of our participants is available in the paper. Also, the full survey instrument is available in the appendix. We had an online questionnaire in which participants were presented with different sensor scenarios and provided open-ended responses about their experiences with sensing systems and the strategies they took to mitigate any challenging experiences they encountered. We performed qualitative data analysis via affinity diagramming and identified 10 key themes around challenges people with disabilities experience with sensing systems and 4 themes around mitigation strategies. I won't have time to go into the details of all 10 challenges here, but I encourage you to download our paper for more information. Here, I'll highlight a few challenges. Let's start with timeouts. Sensor systems time out because they are programmed with defaults that do not account for the slower movement speed of people with physical disabilities. This was common among our participants' anecdotes, such as about sensors that control the timing of doors in stores, workplaces, public transit, and elevators, which often failed to allow long enough for someone with mobility challenges to enter or exit. In addition to doors, other kinds of sensors, such as for speech recognition systems or other apps, often timed out too quickly for users with physical disabilities. Smart sensors can also be a problem, such as if the timeout period for motion controls that identify presence isn't calibrated for the time it may take people with limited mobility to perform actions. P9 noted, automatic doors close before I can walk to them because I'm very slow. P22 noted, I take longer in the bathroom due to disability issues, and I've had the lights turn off on me because I'm staying still in the stall. P19 noted, I have encountered this with timers for locks and automatic doors. By the time I can put the key card in, the door has relocked. Several participants described how buttons, such as those used to trigger the opening of automated doors, were often positioned too high for wheelchair users to reach. In addition to height, the placement of the sensors was also a problem. For example, buttons placed in tight corners or with obstacles in front were difficult to reach for people using mobility aids. P3, an attorney, noted how courthouses often have interior door open buttons that are placed too high, so he must ask for assistance. P22 notes that they cannot reach buttons that are in a corner or at an awkward angle because they cannot pull their wheelchair up to it. P39 describes a smart thermostat in his own home that, due to the height placement, does not detect him. While in many cases, the theme of invisibility relates closely to the prior theme around sensor positioning, since poor positioning can be a cause of functional invisibility, we call out invisibility separately as it relates to a feeling of othering created by technology that isn't recognizing one's fundamental humanity. This theme is highlighted in the writings of disability studies scholar Karen Nakamura, who was the keynote speaker at Assets last year. For instance, P20 notes that doorbell cameras cannot seem to see a wheelchair person. P30 notes that at his place of work, there are cameras to be buzzed into the secure area, but the cameras are too high and he has to lift himself or back far enough away that the camera may see his face. P15 notes that the lights in the bathroom do not recognize them, and they have to keep moving their wheelchair around to get to the lights to turn on. In the space of biometric sensors, face, voice, and fingerprint recognition all pose special challenges for our participants. P13 notes that because they use a ventilator, their voice does not naturally come across to automated speech recognition systems, creating a challenge. P8 notes that ventilators that cover the nose cause problems with facial recognition technology. And P15 notes that they're not able to put their finger on the iPhone fingerprint recognition sensor in the same posture every time because of their disability, resulting in failure of the fingerprint detection. Whenever our survey respondents indicated they experienced a challenge with a particular class of sensing system, we asked them to describe what, if any, steps they took to mitigate that challenge. The 4 most common strategies were seeking assistance from others, developing custom adaptations to make technology work, avoiding sensing technology, and technology abandonment. Our participants described many situations in which they relied on family, friends, colleagues, or caregivers to assist when sensor systems failed to detect them properly. Participants also described relying on strangers or passersby for assistance at times. Additionally, some asked for assistance from authorities in order to get to the root of a problem so that it would be solved not only for them, but for others. For example, P39 notes how he reaches out and complains to the manufacturers of smart devices so that the problems can be remedied for future users. Our survey respondents also discussed adapting their behavior and environment in order to force sensing technologies to better recognize them. For example, several discussed performing exaggerated gestures so that sensors would notice them. In particular, people seated in wheelchairs often found they needed to raise up or wave their hands to be noticed. Some participants with power chairs used features to adjust the height of the chair itself. Other participants described using low-tech adaptations to trigger sensors or buttons. For instance, P14 notes that her husband cut down a stick that she keeps on her wheelchair, which she can use to hit buttons in public places, whereas P16 uses a feature on their power chair to lift it so that they can be 5 feet tall to be noticed by sensors. When asked about workarounds, a common response was that participants often avoided using entire classes of technology because they had expectations that these novel technologies would not work correctly for them. For example, P22 notes that there was a game they wished to play, but because it used motion controls, they've decided to avoid those games. P13 notes that they've never considered buying a health monitoring device because of the notion that they doubt it will track their body correctly. And finally, some participants described abandoning certain categories of technology after frustration with failed sensing. This differs from avoidance, in which people never tried a technology at all due to assumptions that it wouldn't work. In these cases, participants tried to engage with the technology before deciding to abandon it. For example, P12 describes becoming frustrated and giving up at using the fingerprint sensor on their phone, and so instead P22 chooses to use an alternate login method. In this paper, we presented the first systematic study of the challenges posed by a variety of emerging sensing technologies for people with physical disabilities. We presented the findings from a survey of 40 adults with varied disabilities that collected open-ended qualitative responses around participants' experiences with sensor systems. We identified 10 challenges: premature timeouts, poor device positioning, being invisible to sensors, mismatches of abilities to sensors' fidelity, range of motion, variability of abilities over time, difficulty setting up systems, biometric failures, security vulnerabilities, incorrect inferences about users, and data validation problems. We also identified 4 ways in which people attempt to mitigate the limitations of status quo sensor systems. These findings contribute to our understanding of ways in which emerging technologies create new digital divides that exclude people with physical disabilities and point the way toward opportunities for future research in understanding and remedying the hardware, software, and socio-technical challenges of designing and deploying inclusive sensing systems. I encourage you to download our paper at aka.ms/sensa11y and also to reach out and discuss the paper with us on Twitter. Thank you.